Diabetes Revolution podcast with Dr. Sarah Townley, the type 2 diabetes coach, clinical pharmacist, and mom of 6 angels. You don't have to struggle and fight with your blood sugars for the rest of your life. I'm here to teach you the skills you need to control and even reverse this disease. There is such a thing as getting off your meds and creating a future free from diabetes. And you can have it too. Let's get down to business. Hey, you guys. I am feeling good today, and I honestly think it's because I realized that I'm not in the sun as much anymore now that it's onward to fall, and I need to take some vitamin D. So I've been taking plenty of vitamin D, and I feel better. I'm so thankful. Because there's nothing worse than feeling like you are dragging yourself through your life, right? So I thought I'd just pass that on in case any of you need a little reminder that maybe it's time to supplement with some vitamin D. And I will just get past this other thing on to you that might be interesting. Years ago, I read Primal Blueprint by Mark Sisson, and he's definitely a great resource for any of you out there who have heard of Mark's Daily Apple or interested in just any other good places to get useful information for health. But he had written that if you were outside in the sun with just like shorts and a t-shirt on for 15 minutes, that your skin would make 10,000 units of vitamin D. And so that was really surprising to me and powerful to know, because we get kind of worried that we're taking too much vitamin D, right? And I don't know about you, but I have a love affair with the sun. So when it's out, I'm liable to be out there for hours. Of course, you put some sunscreen on after a little while, but honestly, it's okay to be out in the sun without sunscreen on for a little while. That is how we evolved. That is our natural habitat, to be in the sun. So get some sun or get some vitamin D and make sure that you are thriving out there. And of course, people with diabetes, they're definitely more likely to have low vitamin D. I mean, the range of vitamin D normal levels is very wide. It's like 30 to 100, and I have never in my entire career see anyone close to that upper limit of normal. And even when I was taking 5 or 10,000 units a day, my vitamin D level was only like 51. So I just want to give you that information to help you gauge for yourself a little bit more what might be the right amount for you. And of course, if you're worried, your doctor can check your vitamin D levels when you request, or just as part of your routine screens. Okay, enough about vitamin D. Today, I want to talk about this topic, and I want to give a shout out. This question of, is it too late for me to reverse my diabetes, came from a friend that I made on Instant Messenger. Her name's Amadeus, so shout out to her, about wondering if it was too late for her. You know that question that you might hear in your mind? I've done too much damage. It's too late for me. I'm a lost cause. I'm too far gone. These are all different versions of the same fear. And I just want to tell you, you can have these thoughts when you've had diabetes for 1 month or for 30 years. You can have these thoughts when you are on no drugs for your diabetes or on 300 plus units of insulin with multiple daily injections per day. I've seen it come from people who are barely just crossing in over that threshold into type 2 diabetes. And then I've seen people who've had diabetes for decades and on tons of drugs tell me that they believe it's possible to reverse their diabetes. And so I want to just show you that, because it illustrates that these are really just thoughts. They derive from the same basic fear that all human beings have, that something is wrong with me, or I'm different from other people. And it can sound like I'm too whatever, I'm too old, or I'm not enough, like I'm not smart enough, I'm not young enough, whatever it is. And so today I'm going to answer this question for you And I'm going to try not to be too nerdy or geeky because I'm a why person, so I get into the science. So I'm going to give you some of that so that you can use your rational, analytical mind to overpower that emotional, part of your mind that's trying to hijack the situation. But then I'm going to bring us back to thought work because our mindset is really what drives the results we get in our lives. And I want to show you how having this thought and believing it without questioning it, where that leads, and how to intentionally choose a totally different thought that maybe doesn't sound just so optimistic, but can completely change the course of your life. Okay, so let's dig into the nitty-gritty of this question. And the short answer is no. It's never too late to reverse your type 2 diabetes. The long answer is a scientific explanation. I'm a why person, so this is always really helpful for me to change my perspectives or ideas on things. So let's break this down. What exactly is type 2 diabetes? Well, it's insulin resistance in the muscle tissue, in the liver, in other body tissues like the brain, and in your fat tissue. So insulin resistance just simply means they're resistant to the action of insulin. Insulin is trying to push glucose into the cell, and these tissues are not responding to that signal. They're ignoring it. They become resistant to it. So type 2 diabetes is insulin resistance in these various tissues of your body combined with pancreatic failure or the inability to meet the insulin demand to overcome insulin resistance that is happening in the body. So the pancreas is this organ that has the cells in it that make insulin. And it has been doing an enormous job producing tons of insulin for you, well into the development of your insulin resistance. Okay. And if you want more expounding on the disease process of insulin resistance, go back to episode number 2 in this podcast called What is Happening in My Body? And I will explain to you in detail that disease process. But we're going to keep it short for the purpose of this podcast. And what we're talking about when we say pancreatic failure is just simply your pancreas not making enough insulin to overcome that mounting insulin resistance in the body. So this is not type 1 diabetes where you destroy with your immune system your pancreatic beta cells that make insulin. It's completely different, actually. So we're going to talk more about that in just a minute as we start to answer this question. Is it possible to reverse insulin resistance in all of your tissues and to regain pancreatic beta cell function and make insulin again after you have lost the ability to make enough to overcome insulin resistance? So let's break it down. Let's go one by one. Are these things reversible? Without defining a qualifying outcome, unequivocally, yes. These things are all reversible to some degree. Okay, so what that means is if we just say, can we reverse some of these things to some degree? Absolutely, unequivocally, without any doubt or reservation, I say yes. Okay, now, can we fully reverse all of these things? Well, how do you qualify that? That's what I mean when I say without defining a qualifying outcome, because you would only really be able to quantify that by doing some labs that are very, very specific, like a HOMA-IR or something that most doctors are not checking. Okay, but the bottom line is, what do you really want out of this situation? If you're the person out there who's just been diagnosed or has been struggling for years trying to control your daggone blood sugar and it's just running your life and it's a source of a lot of pain for you and stress for you, what do you really want? You want a life that doesn't involve checking your freaking blood sugar all the time, freaking out about your blood sugar all the time, worrying about what you're eating, taking all these medications, going to the doctor, worrying about your future. Like, if you could be free of all these things and you were able to reverse insulin resistance in your body enough to eliminate all of that, I'd say that's pretty awesome, and that's what most of us want. Okay, so can you regain insulin sensitivity in the muscle tissue? Yes. Okay, how? By removing the intracellular and extracellular fat. Okay, so if you go back to podcast number 2, I will explain ectopic fat storage to you, where we begin to store fat when we reach max capacity of storing fat in our under the skin, in our safe places, in our subcutaneous fat. When we run out of space for that, our body starts storing fat in places it's not supposed to be. One of those places is in your muscle tissue. So you're putting fat in your muscle tissue, and that fat is not supposed to be there. And it's accumulating inside the cell, and it's spilling out into the spaces between the muscle cells. And this is a problem for a couple of reasons. One is insulin is a hormone, a chemical signal. It's trying to bind to the receptors, right, out on the outside of the cell, and fat can literally be in the way. Fat can literally be in the way of insulin sending the signal being received, and then the inside cellular cascades of things that happen in response to that receptor being activated by insulin. All of that gets jacked up, for lack of a scientific way to explain it, okay? So the signaling is messed up. So if you were to remove fat from inside the cell and stop it from spilling out into the spaces between the cells, insulin could actually bind and have an effect a lot more effectively. Also, when you are reducing your circulating insulin levels through lifestyle, by changing how you're eating, insulin levels get low. And because high insulin levels drive insulin resistance, when you reduce insulin levels, you reverse that process. Insulin's able to get low, and your cells are able to respond appropriately to insulin again, because they actually will make available receptors on the outside of the cell when insulin levels come down. Because part of the problem is when insulin's high all the time, it's like really loud noise, really loud music. The cells kind of cover up their ears. They take the receptors off the outside of the cell and stop responding in that way to insulin. And that is how they control the loudness of that signal. And so when you allow insulin to come down by changing your lifestyle, and your whole body has lower insulin levels, your muscle tissue will upregulate those receptors again appropriately and respond again to insulin. And as another really important piece to this, muscle cell, and you're going to see this through all the different tissues we're going to talk about, but muscle cells that are full of fat and are having fat like spilling out become inflamed, because the fat is actually eliciting an immune response that comes to address all of that ectopic fat. It's trying to remove it, essentially. And in the process, it causes inflammation. It releases a lot of nasty chemicals, and all these macrophages come to the site, and it just causes inflammation. And inflammation is an independent driver of insulin resistance. Okay? So if you were to remove those things, absolutely, your muscle tissues would become sensitive to insulin again. So can you regain insulin sensitivity in the liver? This is the first site we become insulin resistant in the process of developing type 2 diabetes. And the answer is yes. In fact, even if you have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, you can reverse that. The process of insulin resistance in the liver is simply, for a simplistic model to explain, an overfilling problem. You have no space in your liver to accommodate any more nutrients that are continually being introduced into the system. And so the liver just gets really fat trying to store all of this extra energy that's coming in through your mouth. And when you empty and liberate out all of that fat and all of that storage in the liver, not only do you free up space for more to be accommodated as you eat, but you also remove a barrier to insulin signaling again. The liver is not responding to insulin not just because it doesn't have space to take in any more nutrients to store, but also because all of that fat, again, is interfering with insulin being able to bind and send the message to continue to store, which is its major message in the liver. And so it's kind of the same situation as in the muscle, right? Yes, you can reverse this. Now, can you regain insulin sensitivity in the fat tissue? Yes, you can empty out the fat cells to create space. And when you reduce their size, then the fat's not spilling out, causing inflammation, doing all of those same things that independently drive insulin resistance. And they can take in nutrients again and store them appropriately when they have space. Because most of us have this like max capacity of how many fat cells we can have in our body. And so when they just get really huge, then they stop responding to insulin because they simply can't get any huger. And then also that fat is causing inflammation, which drives insulin resistance. Okay, so I hope that you can see, yes, all of those things are reversible. Yes, all of those things will heal if you only allow the body to remove and liberate all that stored energy, all that fat, and then remove or reduce your insulin levels to allow your cells to become sensitive again. So the last piece of this, which is super nerdy and I get really geeked out about, is can you regain pancreatic beta cell functioning? Okay, because here is the theory, and many of you have been told this at your doctor's office. You may have been told that your beta cells, your insulin-producing cells, have gotten tired. They've gotten, quote, worn out over time, and that they eventually just poop out and stop working and die. Okay, this is what most healthcare providers understand to be part of the disease process and the reason for pancreatic beta cell failure is that the cell dies when it gets overworked. Okay, and I want to show you how this is not true. Okay, because most people who have obesity have high insulin levels, okay? Because insulin drives fat storage, right? It's the signal that tells us to store fat. And so most obese people never develop type 2 diabetes. You know why? Because they grow more beta cells and they make more insulin and they're able to store fat in the places that don't make them sick, like under the skin, all over their body. So that's one reason, that's one piece of evidence that shows that beta cells don't get exhausted. We don't overwork them. In fact, it's in complete misalignment with how the human body actually responds to stress, right? Like when we stress our brain, when we use our brain more, when we work our brain harder, it gets smarter, right? The parts of our brain that we're using get more lit up, more interconnected, more active. When we do more push-ups or we do more squats, our muscles, they get bigger, they get stronger. Like the human body is designed to acclimate to its environment and to get stronger when it is stressed. And so the whole idea that your beta cells would burn out doesn't really make sense with how the human body responds to a higher demand. And then here's another angle on it that I think really makes it clear. Type 2 diabetes is growing just as rapidly in our pediatric population as it is in our adult population. It's a problem, right? A huge problem. And there is nothing on a 4-year-old child or an 8-year-old child that is burning out, that is getting worn out. It just doesn't make sense that a child who is 8 years old is having any part of their body getting worn out from overuse or being overworked. There's something else going on. Okay, so now I'm going to teach you what is going on. Your beta cells that make insulin do not actually die. They go to sleep. The word for this that scientists use is dedifferentiation. Okay, dedifferentiation is caused by three things. One, glucotoxicity. That means toxicity in response to high glucose levels, high sugar levels. Two, lipotoxicity. That is toxicity and damage that is caused by fat. And then three is inflammation. These are the three forces that are causing dedifferentiation of your beta cells. Are these reversible? Yeah. You can bring your blood sugar levels down one way or another. I teach lifestyle, but you can do it with drugs. Lipotoxicity, can you remove the fat from your pancreas that is not supposed to be there? Yeah, just like you can remove it from your liver and from your behind and from all these other places. Okay? Can you reduce inflammation? Yes, by eating clean, by allowing all that fat that is not supposed to be there to liberate so that your immune system isn't attacking all that fat that's not supposed to be there in your pancreas. When you do that, when you remove all three of those, yeah, some people's beta cells redifferentiate. They wake up and start making insulin appropriately and responding appropriately to other hormones in the body. And also remember, most type 2s make insulin, and they're often making higher than normal levels of insulin because they're insulin resistant. And if you've listened to my podcast, number 2, you understand that insulin resistance comes directly from a disease process that is escalating insulin levels in the body. Your body is making plenty of insulin, most of you. Okay? It's just not enough to overcome that insulin resistance that has grown, taken root and really grown. I have seen many, like dozens, personally, I have seen this, of people who have gotten off their insulin doses. Many of those people were on over 100 units of insulin a day. How is that possible? Well, it's possible because insulin resistance is reversible and they make insulin. They did not lose their ability to make insulin and may have regained some of their capacity to create and produce insulin. So, to what extent will you see your insulin resistance reversed? That question would be so fun to find out, right? I mean, certainly probable, if not guaranteed, but dependent on what you're willing to do about it. So here's a good question to ask yourself. How do you feel and act when you think it's too late for me? Let's look at what you do when you're thinking it's too late, or I'm a lost cause, or I'm too far gone, or I've done too much damage, whatever it is. You're going to feel, hopeless probably? Something like hopeless, despair. And then what do you do? How do you act when you're feeling like that? Well, you probably don't do a lot, right? You're not going to try anything new or change anything. You're probably not monitoring your blood sugars because why would you do that? You're probably feeling a lot of shame, right? Or regret. And then you continue to do things with your lifestyle that caused you to get sick and make you feel bad. So of course you're going to be too far gone. You're going to become a lost cause. You're going to be too late. Yeah, that's the result you're going to create when you're thinking those thoughts because of the way they make you feel and the way you show up when you're in that thought process. So what if you changed your thought just a little bit to something like, it could work for me, or I'm willing to see what I can do about this. Or at least I can stop this from getting worse. How would you feel if you chose to think one of those thoughts? What would you do? And what kind of a result would you create from that shift in your thinking? What's the downside of choosing one of those thoughts? You can change your entire experience and your outcome by choosing your thoughts differently. And this is the best news that I have to give you, because that's what we are really wanting. We want to feel better. And if you could feel better simply by changing your thought, this is entirely in your control. All right, so what a fun topic. I'm actually really pleased that I got to discuss this with you and thanks for asking this question, Amadeus, because so many of us have these similar kinds of thoughts in different areas of our lives, and we don't even see it. We don't even know that it's an optional thought that's rooted in just fear of, the similar fear that we have that something's wrong with us. All right, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to eat tonight. You guys want to know? Tonight, I'm going to make nachos. Yeah. Okay, I have a super awesome hack that I just found that I'm so pleased that I get to tell you about, because I've been on low carb for years and I just figured this out, and it's so easy and simple. I see all these fun recipes out there of how to make your own tortilla chips with mozzarella and almond flour, and it's just too intense for me. Like, I have 6 kids. It's enough work for me to make them dinner. And if I have to go to all these, great lengths to make myself a dinner, I'm just not sure that I've got it in me every night to do that. So I'm looking for quick and easy sometimes. And this hack is quick and easy. So if you've been searching for a tortilla chip alternative, I am so excited to tell you how to do it. I'll link the recipe, which is super simple, in the show notes. And all it is taking a low carb tortilla. Okay, so I've used Carb Balance mostly because they sell it at Costco, and it's the flour one. My family can't even tell the difference between these low carb tortillas and a regular tortilla. So hallelujah, because we use them for quesadillas, we use them for breakfast burritos, and now I'm going to use them to make nachos. So really all you do is you take these tortillas and you cut them up with scissors into triangles, like a tortilla chip or whatever, who cares? Lay them out on a pan. You put them in the oven at 350 with some olive oil brushed on and some salt sprinkled on for like 8 minutes or something until they start to get kind of crispy. And then you pull them out. And then you can dip them in guac or dip them in salsa or whatever you want. Isn't that amazing? I'm going to make nachos with it. And I'm just going to do ground beef, you could do all kinds of stuff. You could do pork, pulled pork, or whatever you want on there. But tonight I'm going to do ground beef, and I'm going to put Monterey Jack cheese on there and some black beans and a little corn. And I'm going to serve it up with guac and salsa and sour cream. It's just going to be a party. So I hope you guys try it and get the same awesome results as me. And I will link that recipe in the show notes. And I love you guys. I will see you next week. High five for tuning in with me today. You are getting smarter and stronger when you show up for yourself this way. You can get more free tools to help you control type 2 diabetes on my website, sarahtownley.com. And if you're serious about ending your struggle with diabetes, join my membership, The Diabetes Revolution, where you work with me in a community of people just like you. See you on the next episode.